All right, and recording. We're recording. Let's get this show on the road because last time we kept
We got
talking.
distracted.
We didn't. People may have noticed we didn't have a podcast last week. I'm sure no one noticed.
People care.
No one cared we didn't have a podcast last week, purely because we got distracted. Ashley ended up wanting to punch me in the face because I made her angry, and we don't like it when Ashley is angry. So,
Hey,
podcast was actually called off because of this. Don't blame me.
you triggered it.
Yeah, no, I did. I triggered it unknowingly. I triggered the wrath. So, we are hopeless at coming up with ideas when it comes to podcasts. Like, you asked your friends, and the best they could do was tattoos and vicarious trauma.
Two very different ends of the
Shout out
spectrum.
to Sarah and Orion for giving those topics. And we're not going with them. So we had to do our research, and I found this page, conversationstartersworld.com, 50 something, like a bunch of
Yeah.
philosophical questions. And I don't know why. I think me and you work on the philosophical wavelength. I think, we tend to not have silly, stupid conversation. We like the deeper stuff. So,
Okay.
with that said, I will say I liked 14. Maybe we can discuss that in a later podcast. But if someone you loved was killed in front of you, but someone created a copy of them that was perfect right down to the atomic level, would they be the same person? And would you love them just as much? That spoke to me. I don't know why. Maybe there was this death part in it. Who knows? But we're moving on from that. We're doing 54, which is something that resonated with you.
Yes, it did.
Do you remember it?
No, but it's in my hand.
Okay, go
All
on.
right. Why do we judge ourselves by our intentions, but judge others by their actions?
Yes. So this one, when I first read it, I was just like, what? It's too hard, too stupid. So I did ask for you to flesh it out for me a bit more,
Okay.
so all the other listeners can understand what you're talking about.
All right. I feel like it comes down to like the excuses we make. So when we make a mistake or something goes bad, the first thing we'll always say is like, oh, but I meant well, or like, I didn't mean it like that. But when we get hurt by someone or they wrong us, it's always like, hey, they shouldn't have done it. We're very like less likely to go, hey, did they mean to actually harm me?
Yes, right. So I did cheat a little bit.
Okay.
Because,
Already.
well, because I was too stupid for this, right? I was just like, yet again, Ashley's like choosing a topic that is way beyond my knowledge base. So yeah, look, what I read was it can stem from the most mundane stuff like driving and being upset at someone next to you for maybe being in your lane when you decide to change lanes, and you blame them for their actions of, oh, why were you there, or
In
why
my
did you,
way.
when you should have probably reflected upon yourself and be like, well, maybe I should have checked my blind spot more thoroughly. So why do we
Yeah.
put the blame on their actions and not reflect inwards, kind of thing,
Yes. Yep. Yep. I'll
right?
give you that.
And so why do you think we do that? Do you think it just comes from an innate sense of selfishness, lack of awareness?
Hmm. I don't think so. I think it's like a protection. I think it's us trying to
Mm,
reason with ourselves, make peace with like, I wouldn't do that if I knew it would end like this. Oh, at least some of us. Some people do.
right.
Some people get off on that. But yeah, that you wouldn't want the bad thing to happen. So it's easier to go back to, oh, but what were my intentions? What went into it beforehand, so that I can sit in that space. It's much more comfy.
Yeah, so that's fair. Like a lot of, especially in our field of work, we get a lot of people trying to justify their behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to
We
justify
do.
their intentions on why they did A, B, or C. And so yeah, it's kind of pertinent to what we do, that intention side of things. But why do you think we so hastily then just judge others by the action and not, or why do we struggle kind of putting ourselves in their shoes in a way to consider, hey, maybe something else was going on around that time.
Yeah.
I think the better versions of us do that.
Think that far ahead.
Yeah, the better versions of ourselves are a bit more aware, and we can kind of put ourselves in their shoes. Again, I'm thinking about what we do. You know, we try to understand from their perspective and their viewpoint and their disadvantages. And again, this topic will always come up: their trauma, right?
Yes.
why they
see the world the way they do.
Yeah, right. Their actions. But what do you think we, as people, generally just jump straight to being harsh when judging
on others?
Yeah,
because I think again, it's the easier thing to do. So instead of giving it that thought, or when you do go that deep and you think, where were they coming from? Did they mean it? It takes some of the blame off them as well. So then you don't have somewhere to direct your energy.
Right.
So if you've been wronged and you're upset, you want to, deflect that somewhere. And if you take the responsibility away, then you've got nowhere to send that, uncomfortable feeling or negative feeling that you're sitting with. You're trying to get rid of it, and it's got nowhere to go.
So do you feel like it's just purely a self-preservation kind of thing? Like, I don't want to hurt my own feelings.
Yeah. I just want this, that negative, whatever it is, to just be gone as quickly as possible. And so it's just, I find it interesting that when it comes to ourselves, it naturally is interpreted one way, but when it comes to others, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And it's what's the most automatic to just make it go away as quickly as possible.
Where do you think it comes from, though? Like, is this just an innate desire to protect our own thoughts and our feelings? It's that cognitive bias that we have towards ourselves. We see ourselves as always being in the right. We know our intentions was always good, right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, like, I don't want to step in my foot into the people that do what we do, right?
Yeah.
Community corrections, probation, parole. Like, do you feel like straight away we're at a disadvantage a little bit because humans are wired that way to kind of judge people on their actions?
Oh, like as in that we...
Because if we sit across from someone that has done something wrong, right, and innately we are judge people based on their actions, do you think that we're already at a disadvantage because we're wired that way?
Well, you see, I actually would interpret that the complete opposite. I think that for us to come into the job, we're probably operating at a level where we're thinking about that sort of stuff more naturally than others.
You would hope so.
Well, yeah, you'd hope that you've thought, hey, this is what I would be working in. I'm probably going to have to look past the surface a little bit. Yep. So maybe it's less automatic for us to do that. So I would look at that as an advantage for us. Actually, we know what we're getting ourselves into.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually, now that I think about it more. I think, being in the role and position that we are in, we are in a way forced, right? Yeah. Because when we ask questions, we probe, we write reports for court or whatever it is, we do kind of have to place ourselves in a way in their world to an extent when we're asking them all these questions. So, yeah, no, you're right. Again, we're just awesome people in what we do. Yeah.
But would you say that the skills, obviously, that we're using at work, that if you can see them bleeding into your personal life? I think I'm more naturally understanding. Like, I think I was understanding walking into the job, but then doing it all day long, practicing that skill in my everyday life, my personal friends and family, I think I can be more understanding of where they're coming from. Do you know what I mean? Then that's my natural sort of state compared to judging maybe as harshly as I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I again, I don't know. I'd have to do some self-reflection on that to see but I would expect subconsciously there is a bleeding effect, right? Yeah. Whereas if you do it every day for your job, then it just subconsciously bleeds into how you think generally. I still find myself a bit harsh, though. I have to be. So
it's a breakthrough for you.
Yeah, I don't know if I still probably on a surface level judge others by their actions, but But then again, I don't know comparatively to the general public. Am I?
Yeah.
Do I do it more? Do I do it less?
Yeah.
Who
That's true.
knows? Who knows? Um, what else did you have?
I think also, but just the other side of that coin, as I said it, I realized that sometimes I feel like I do the opposite, where
Mm,
in my personal life, I feel like my patience is much less like
mm,
I have less capacity to understand where people are coming from.
yep.
Because I sometimes I feel like I minimize everyday issues because I'm like, it's really not that deep. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to think about where you were coming from. I just want this problem to go away. So sometimes I
Yeah.
can also judge more quickly in my personal life than I
Yeah.
think I did before.
Yeah. And like you said, I think there's layers to it as well. Like
Mm.
for the general public, I would more likely judge them or consider their intentions. Whereas in my personal life, I judge based on actions a little bit more. Because I just feel like,
Really?
yeah, because I just feel like I'm so close to you that I expect, like I shouldn't. I shouldn't expect this, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, you should know how I'm thinking or what I'm
Yeah.
feeling because you know me so well, and I'm probably speaking about my wife or something, right? Like, well, because we're on the same wavelength, we've been married and we've known each other
Yeah.
for so many years. It's like, oh, when I do something, like I would expect her to know my intentions are not the result of the action, right? So if I did something that was really bad and my wife was like, "Oh, that's horrible. Why would you do that?" I'd like to think that she knew my intentions were like more, you know, was more good than what the outcome was if the outcome was bad.
Can you take me back on that journey with you? Are you saying that you feel in your personal life you
Yes.
expect your friends and family to think of you more for intentions or actions, or that you think of your family and friends more for their intentions and actions? Because I think I got really confused there.
I uh the former. So I would expect my wife, for
Them.
example, yeah, and
Yeah.
like a strong relation to me, to think more
Yeah.
of my intentions and not judge me
Yeah.
purely on my actions.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. But do you hold the same expectations of them? So if your wife or someone close to you was to do something,
I would say
do you think,
yes.
okay,
Yeah, just because I'd like to think I know these people so well that if they did something wrong, I
yeah,
would give them like the benefit of the doubt, right? I'd be like, I
it's not
think,
like you.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
Okay.
Like I'm sure they didn't mean that or whatever. Um,
Okay.
but I think it happens more on mundane, like everyday things, right? When it's
Yeah.
something big, then you tend to think about it more. Like, oh, why did they do that? Why did they wrong me so much? Why am I feeling this way? Did they really mean that?
Well, yeah, the thought then that comes to mind for me is like, when does that get dangerous? Because what I'm thinking about now is like enabling behaviors.
Mm,
When do we get stuck on, oh, that's not who they are as a person? And maybe we're thinking about a past version of them, but their current behavior maybe is indicating that they've changed, or maybe they are behaving in a way that's more selfish or more harmful or more hurtful. But because we feel close to them, are we trying to excuse that away and be like, oh, that's not like them, or that's
mm,
not something they normally would do? And
yeah,
then, do you know what I mean? That can really foster really bad habits and negative traits in someone because we forgive it more naturally the closer we are.
yeah, yeah. And again, we also see that a lot. We see that enabling behavior a lot with the guys that we come across.
Mm.
But yeah, and that happens on an intimate level or a personal level, from what I was
Yeah.
saying, right? Like their family or their friends are more forgiving
Yeah.
because they maybe falsely perceive their intentions were good, and that's
Mm-hmm.
when that enabling behavior, and it's pretty bad too because that enabling behavior becomes a habit, and that's habit becomes you know something even worse. So
Yeah.
for the most part, I think we're just wired that way. Do you
Yeah.
think what do you think it takes for people to flip it and be more consciously uh judging others by their intentions as opposed to just their actions? Like how do we change that narrative around?
This might be a selfish answer. In my head, I'm thinking, I think a little bit more about other people's intentions,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the answer for why I do that is
Yes.
for what you're always on my back about, that I more deeply am thinking about myself. Do you know what I mean? I know my own decisions are based really on my intentions rather than my actions. So I know that to be true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's then I see the world that way now. I no longer
Right.
have an opposite opinion. I'm like, if this is how deeply I'm thinking,
Yep.
why aren't other people doing it? So maybe I'm giving a lot more benefit of the doubt to others than.
Right. Okay. But so you didn't have to develop that just because you're naturally a deep thinker. That again is pervasive to how you see others in the world. That
Well,
you
yeah,
also,
isn't that how we all see the world?
yeah, I guess so. Well, I think that I'm a little bit of a deep thinker, but I still like judge. I'm judgy. I'm so judgy of people's actions. I don't know. When it comes to my guys, I definitely do put myself in their shoes a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, probably a lot, to be honest with you. Um, and it's weird. Ugh. The worst of actions, for me, can sometimes have, an underpinning thing that resulted it. So, yeah, I think it's important to consider intentions.
Careful, David. Your empathy's showing in front of the masses as
I
well.
know, this is not good. I dislike the world and everyone in it.
This has
No.
been recorded.
No, look, like I said, I really enjoy what we do. And the whole reason why, people can be successful in what they do, not saying that I'm successful, is because, you can kind of step out of your own shell a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. I'm hoping you have more than that because I don't know. I feel like we're smashing these philosophical questions pretty good.
Oh, God. Well, the other thing that popped into my head is I went for a job interview back before this role.
Yeah.
And during the training, it was the age-old kind of cliche, you treat others the way that you want to be treated. So there's two parts to this, right? So do we think that is where it's coming from? Because that doesn't, as I've just said, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. Like we should treat others the way we want to be treated, but we think about our intentions and not theirs. So, how are we missing the point there? Do you know what I mean? Where is that going missing?
I think people are lazy. They're lazy, they're emotionally lazy, and they're cognitively lazy as well, right? Yeah. It takes a lot of effort to kind of put yourself in that person's shoes and contemplate what that person's gone through and all the variables that have made up that action, okay? Yeah. Someone cuts you off, or someone pushes in line, or someone does something wrong to you. Like, it just takes so much brain power to process what could it have been that resulted in that one action, right? The lazy way out is just be like, that person is just an ass. Yeah. Right? That's
annoyed. You're an idiot.
It's just an easy way out. It's lazy, and like the emotional side, it's like I think there's a level of emotional investment if you do give them the benefit of the doubt, or you seek to find out what the intention was, or to process that thought. Yeah. Like, you're just going to have to give that person some empathy all of a sudden, Yeah. It's like...
And what that comes with is like, it's almost like an anticlimactic ending. Because again, you've then got nowhere to redirect that energy. Because if you're understanding them and you can see where they're coming from, and that if, their intentions were good or whatever it is, then it's like, well, what do I do with the action that still harmed me or wronged me, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and if something, and look, this question, why do we judge ourselves by intentions and judge others by their actions? It usually comes up when people have wronged you, right? It usually comes up when people have done something negative to you, when you feel frustrated, angry, annoyed, whatever. Yeah. Like, we don't judge people's positive actions, like, right?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Why don't we? So yeah, you're right. All that pent up emotional, anger that you say I bottle up. And I never let out, once that person crosses the line, that's it, I'm going to explode. It's like they need to let it go somewhere. Yeah. So, what easier way than just to blame the troubles of the world on this one individual? right?
and their actions
Yeah.
in that minute and nothing else.
Yes. So, lazy way out, and I also feel like wired, naturally wired that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I
the
feel like
second
you've
part
done
of
a
this
lot of work.
was
I feel like, I don't know, maybe you've done a lot of work to get to where you are. You're not just naturally a deep thinker. I feel like you've I don't know, done a lot of self-reflection, something.
oh yeah, yeah, 100%. Have we not talked about this?
Yeah. Well, I want the world to know too.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
Well,
like, you naturally.
yeah. It was actually an exercise I did at uni. Um, so it was like an intro to counseling class, and it
Mm.
really like rocked my world. So they got you know, those old exercises, like the left side of the room is a 0 and the right side of the room is a 10, like as a spectrum. And they put different scenarios up on the board, and they asked us, obviously we weren't trained as mental health professionals, but like, how do you think when you're qualified you'll respond to X situation? So as a blanket example, it was something as simple as like, you know, a father has abandoned the family after a divorce.
Mm.
And then they wanted you to stand from 0 to 10 and sort of judge your own bias and
Yeah.
what would you do with that, and yeah, where would you fall? And people just started walking, and they stood there and they were totally confident until the teacher was kind of like, okay, now tell me why that's where you're standing or that's how you're feeling. And
Yep.
they were like, well, just cause. And when you can't put your hand on those reasons and you look
Yep.
like a bit of an idiot in front of so many people,
Mm.
that exercise really started to make you think. But anyway, it got deeper and deeper. The examples obviously got more complex, the conversations got more intense, and then we were really encouraged to go home and reflect on
Mm.
what it is that could sit in front of us and set us off.
And here's a thought too, like perhaps those people who stood on whatever rating score that
Number.
whatever number they stood on, maybe they did have answers, but it was their own personal trauma that didn't want them to admit to it, right?
Yeah.
I feel an 8 because I was also abandoned as a child or whatever it was, but no one wants to really inwardly reflect. One, talk about that in a public forum, but two, also to an extent, admit to themselves that this is the way they're feeling. I'm feeling bitter. I'm feeling an 8. I'm judging this person harshly because I also don't want to admit my own trauma, and that's where it stems from.
Yeah. And so then, like, this class literally to this day sits with me because we went through all of that. I was very lucky that I had made really good friends. And so that class, because it was counseling and there was a lot of really deep questions and stuff that we got asked, I was very comfortable with those friends, to be really honest. So I knew I was at an advantage because I wasn't hiding myself from sharing.
Yeah.
And so I got more out of, whatever lessons were being taught. But what I really learned was how to self-reflect when you're not in a classroom anymore and you're not in front of other people, no facades, no nothing, just me sitting with myself, being really honest, really real. Why did I do that? And it started, I guess, the self-reflection process for me, where I was like, what has happened, whether it's in my past or in my present? I started, being able to do that as it happened, instead of having to look back years later and go, hey,
all right,
this is actually this makes me feel or think this way. Now it's kind of, as it's happening, that depth comes automatically.
Well, that is a talent. To do that automatically on the spot, real time. That's a talent not many people have, Ashley.
Yeah. Years ago. This, my God, happened in 2014.
Wow.
15, maybe. This class is a long time.
The advantage you have then to have developed that back in 2000, what did you say, 14?
14, I'm going to say, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I was also going to say, right, that I think we are more forgiving of people who, if we're talking about this question, we're more forgiving of people's negative actions if we have already some kind of experience with that action, right? For example, if a person, again, I'm just going to use the most easiest one. If a person cuts us off, and just, cuts us off in traffic, right?
Yeah.
We may be more forgiving if we recently did the same thing but kind of justified it ourselves because I
Yeah.
was in a rush, my child was sick, I needed to go to the hospital, whatever it was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We tend to be more forgiving of those circumstances that we come across, right?
Yeah.
This person you see, I don't know, what's another example? Stealing something at a shop,
Mhm.
right? Straight away, 99% of the population would judge that person harshly, right?
Yeah.
But if you were like once poor, had no money, you were homeless, and you were starving, like you would
Yeah.
be more forgiving of that person's actions.
Yeah.
So again, that 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 idea of why we judge others harshly on their action is based on your own experience as well.
Yeah. But then that can go both ways as well. So you might be aware of your own experiences, but depending on how deep maybe it resonates as trauma for you,
Mm,
you might want to separate yourself from that. So, if you
mm,
do reflect on that time when you were poor and you did do that, that may make you judge this other person like, I'm not like that anymore.
mm,
You're lower than me because you're going through this, difficult period in your life. And now I'm better off. So it
mm.
can trigger you kind of, I guess, in both ways. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. It could trigger you in the sense that I pulled myself up from my bootstraps and I
Mm.
I got
I'm
myself.
okay.
Yeah, you should do the same. You shouldn't resort to that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
those people are not nice people.
no, but they exist.
They exist. No, we don't like those type of people that think that way. Come on, be nicer to
Yeah.
people. Humanity needs that right now. With everything happening in the world. But yeah, so I guess you're right. There's flip sides to all these
Most
questions.
of it.
You know,
Yeah.
it could turn out good or bad based on your history and it's just the way you're wired. Then just the way that you're
Yeah.
wired to think,
And
whether
how you
you've had
interact.
that experience in the past or not.
Yeah. What do you want to do with it now? Like, how aware are you in your today
Hmm.
about your actions? And are you willing to accept that you're reacting that way because of XYZ? Or are you just going to keep going through and being like, this is easy?
Hmm.
I'd rather be mad at you or be annoyed than, give it any more thought than what it is at that time.
Yeah. So if we just focus on the positive, right? Do you feel like it allows people to kind of, when we build this ability, when we strengthen this ability to really empathize with people and
Yeah.
explore their intentions rather than just look at their actions, do you think
Mhm.
it gives us the power to forgive other people more?
Ooh. Um,
And think of it from a personal sense.
okay.
So like personal
Yeah.
people in our lives that have wronged us, that have made us feel
Mm,
bad, horrible, whatever.
mm, mhm.
If we kind of consider their intentions now, can we forgive them?
Ooh.
Ex-partner, mother, father, whatever it is.
I I want to say yes,
Mm-hmm.
but then when you said to be personal, I also know that I forgiveness is a strange concept to me.
Okay.
So I once argued about this in a philosophy class too.
Do you argue? Are you one of those people that argue a lot in class?
No, the entire philosophy class was, I swear, every question that came up at all, there was never an answer. It was always an argument
It
that
sounds like a
never
fun
resolved.
class.
You would have loved it.
You just go around in circles.
But when it comes to forgiveness,
Mm.
do we owe forgiveness to others
Mm-hmm.
or to ourselves?
Uh, can it be both?
It
I
can
mean,
be. Of course it
everyone
can.
wins,
Yes.
but why does it
But
have to be one or the other?
maybe, well, it doesn't. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. But being personal, being open and honest with you here,
Mm.
I think I'm someone who more naturally feels a sense of, I don't know, owing forgiveness to myself more ever than to anyone else. So if somebody else wrongs me,
Mm.
I never feel a pressure to forgive them, no matter how close they are to me, or if they're, a stranger or an acquaintance to me. It's not very often that I find I struggle with the guilt of like, oh, I have to forgive them
Mm.
and make that okay.
Right.
But it's a sense of owing forgiveness to myself that it did happen to me. And I experienced that. And I need to forgive that it kind of existed so
Mm.
that I can move on. rather
Right.
than forgiving that person so that they can, relinquish their guilt and they can move on. Does that make sense?
Right. It kind of, yeah, it kind of does make sense. But why do you feel like you have to forgive yourself when someone has wronged you? Like if someone has done something bad to hurt you, why do you have to then forgive yourself?
For whatever reaction I've had. So
Right.
how, like, if it's a family member or someone close to you and you feel angry or hurt or sad or whatever it is,
Mm.
not that I condone it, but let's say that you then lash out and
Yes.
you say something or you distance yourself from that person, and they are also experiencing negative
Yes.
things because of you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more that I feel that we should forgive ourselves as a priority. And
Yes.
then if you have the capacity to forgive that person in return, then that's okay too. But I don't think enough attention is given to us forgiving the situation for ourselves, and that we had a reaction to it, or that we
Oh,
felt
okay.
a certain way, or we're allowed to process it
Mm.
and then figure out what we're going to do next.
Okay. So in that sense, do you ever, of course you do, not ever, but do you often then, when someone has wronged you in this question and you've lashed out, like, uh, do you then consider their intentions? I mean, that process of
Mm,
forgiving yourself, even, do
yeah.
you then consider their intentions or what their intentions were, what they really meant?
Well, see, then this, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite. So, in that process as well, like, it's not very often that me personally, I'll lash out either.
Mm.
I will consider where they're coming from, but again, I would more readily accept that it happened, to be able to move on for me than I would to give that person maybe a second chance
Yeah.
to do it again. Because I've understood your actions, I've taken the time to think, hey, XYZ might have been going on for you, but to an extent, you still did it anyway.
Mm.
Like, I can understand how it happened, but it still also happened to me. I've made my peace with it, but that doesn't mean that I have to make my peace with you. And so without the lashing out and the big emotional, fallout,
Mm.
I can resonate with that situation and move on. But it doesn't mean that, yeah, I'm someone who struggles, I guess, with going
Mm.
back to how things were. Forgiveness for me should come with, like, things being reset to how they were.
Right.
And I'm not
Okay.
very good at that.
Yeah.
I'm very bad at it.
Well, in that sense, I'm not good with that either. So when I
Okay.
forgive somebody, um, it's not for me. Uh,
Okay.
it's for them. Like,
Yep.
is it for them? I don't know. I really don't. Well, when I forgive someone, right,
Mm.
I kind of say it's okay. It happened.
Yeah.
I try not. I'm like, I'm not going to hold any more grudges, and I'm just going to move on with my life now. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's for me or that's for them, but
Okay.
it's when you say reset, it doesn't. It never goes back to how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
nah, I'm moving on with my life. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
Okay.
I appreciate if I process it, like right,
Yep.
I'll appreciate the maybe the intention, maybe the factors that resulted in that
Yeah.
wrong, in that action.
Yep.
I appreciate it for what it is and what
Yeah.
it was. I
Mhm.
forgive you, and then that's it. Like, we'll
Yeah.
move on from this point forward, and we're not
Yeah.
gonna be friends.
Yeah. But the forgiveness is like a not harboring any
Mm.
ongoing
And
frustration, sadness,
maybe
XYZ.
then, in that sense, it's for me then, personal,
Yeah.
not harboring anything. Mm.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that it just sits with you, because depending as well on the other person. So whether they feel guilty or anything about the fact that they've wronged you, your
Mm.
forgiveness to them may mean nothing. They
Yeah.
may not care that they had an impact on you and then you've moved on from it. And particularly if we've not taken the time to let ourselves process our own emotions, we're too busy trying to forgive them for what they did. Do you know what I mean? Then that,
Mm.
for me, I feel gets very dangerous. And yeah,
Yeah.
I struggle with forgiveness for that reason. Like, it's not about you. When you are the wrongdoer, you've
Mm.
harmed another person. Why is it that there's such a push for you to get the forgiveness, or for you to get, I don't know, the process of healing started rather than the person who was wrong.
Yeah. But you forgiving them doesn't necessarily mean that they even know that you forgive them. You know what I mean?
True.
Like it's just for you in your mind. It's a sense of closure. But I find
Yeah.
that oftentimes, and my wife tells me this, like when I get annoyed or frustrated at something and I lash out, like verbally, I'll just lash out at someone or something. Like she says, "Oh, you're just gonna regret it later. Don't even do it." Right? And I know I will. She's like, she's always right. I know I will. I'll regret it. Like, and it
Yeah.
happens so often. I don't know. It happened sometimes instantaneously. Like I'll regret it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm just an idiot, so mean.
Shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Or it happens even within the day or day after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's weird how that works. It's like that part of your brain, once everything settles, once the dust is settled, once that emotion and the primitive brain is switched off, right? You do go back and process it and think about the intentions, and ultimately you're like,
Reflect.
yeah, you reflect and you're screwing yourself over twice, because not only did you feel frustrated and angry at the time, all that emotion,
Yeah.
but when you do reflect, you feel crap again, because it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Why did I do that?
yeah. So we're emotional beings. We're so horrible.
Do you ever feel any kind of bitter when you do lash out? And you know what I mean? You've felt that raw emotion. Is there any kind of benefit, even for a second,
Is there any benefit? Yeah, there's
to you?
benefit. Yeah, yeah. There's just, I don't know. It's just a release, right? It's just a release of
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
pent up frustration, which
Mhm.
one could argue, why is there pent up frustration in the first place? Why are you feeling this way? Why, are you angry? And why do you feel upset at something that's so mundane when my wife is
Mhm.
just standing right next to me and she's seeing the same thing happen and she has no
Yeah.
reaction to it? Why am I reacting to it the way I do?
Because you don't feel your feelings, David.
I can't believe you said it on the podcast. Ashley has this idea that I don't feel my emotions.
You don't.
No, this was a big discussion of ours, which nearly resulted in someone getting knocked out, and it wasn't Ashley.
No, it wasn't. You deserved it.
Yes, and I don't know. Evidently I do feel my negative emotions, probably just not my positive ones. But yeah, that's what I find for me personally. I lash out emotionally when I shouldn't during these mundane things, and regret it instantaneously. Like, yeah, horrible.
When that regret kicks in, though, so if you're saying this is obviously a thing that's happened more than once, do you feel any sense of growth or change coming, where you're like, this is a habit now, like this is a behavior pattern that I'm doing, or you're still just like, meh?
I get better at recognizing it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I get, like, in the moment, I recognize somewhere subconsciously that you're just gonna regret this later. Like, you're just gonna feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the regret comes from like an internal feeling of like, you suck. Like, why'd you do
Yeah.
that? Right. And it
Yeah.
happened really young when I was in high school, when we were playing. This is just so childish, right? We were playing handball in high school,
Yes.
and one of the people got out, but they refused to get out. And just, I just went and punched the kid. And yeah, he's just, you're boys and you're just stupid.
I mean, can't relate.
Oh,
Carry on.
are you sure you can't relate?
Shh, shh.
So yeah, I punched the guy, his glasses flew off, and he started crying, and he followed me around the whole playground, just like crying his eyes out. And I still remember to this day, I'm like 38, right? And I still remember he's like crying, but so angrily crying at me, like crying, following me around the whole school. And at that point I was freaked out. I'm like, why are you following me? Like, stop this. And
Yeah.
and now I look back, and that was my one, it sounds so silly, but it was my first one biggest regret when that happened, because I just
Yeah.
saw the pain that I had caused that guy. And I was
Yeah.
just like, oh man, just from something so mundane in my mind,
Yeah.
it affected him so much.
Yeah. And were you really that annoyed or angry or whatever feeling you were feeling to facilitate doing that.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Nothing, nothing justifies, physical violence where you punch someone, right?
Yeah.
But then also not realizing the result, the outcome, what the outcome would
Yeah.
be. And again, when we judge others by their actions, I think we also, our judgment, how harsh we judge them, also depends on the outcome of their action, right?
Yeah.
Naturally, if they did something really mundane that caused a major accident, like we're going to judge them really harshly,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, that was my one thing, and I have carried that, and I think I bumped into him when we were older, and I apologized to him as well, and I don't think he remembered it, but yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, "Fuck, man, you should have remembered it because
That changed me.
you were really upset over a handball game
Wow.
because I punched you."
I mean, valid. Like,
Yeah, I know. Kids are
but
silly.
that's a whole other conversation that is just equally as fascinating. But that two people go through the same experience and draw such different things out of it. Do you know what I mean? That sat more so with you, and you weren't even the person harmed, and this poor guy who was involved was kind of like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how what you interpret and what you see in front of you kind of like changes you as a person as well. And yeah, I think that's really powerful, especially in what we do and what we read and what we say and what we see. It's like, well, I wonder what, and that's why I wanted to ask you, and I don't think you should answer this, but like, prior to getting involved in this career, like, it'd be interesting to see your evolution down the line and how that kind of changes your way of thinking, because you're a deep thinker. I can only imagine the thoughts that swirl in your head after X amount of time doing this.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole, but we had half a conversation this afternoon that, like, I have been an emotional person before. I've carried emotional weight and maybe empathy fatigue in this job and in my life from deep thinking. But I think this week I'm demonstrating the first signs of burnout, and that is feeling different to me. It's not that I'm feeling emotional, but I am feeling quite heavy, and it's a burnout in me that I can see from just running myself on empty and just keeping going for other people and other things, and maybe putting myself on the back burner a little bit.
So have you felt burnout before? So does this feel like a different burnout?
I mean, I may have felt burnout before, but whatever this kind of burnout is, no. Because I'm not emotional at all. Normally, when I thought I had been burnt out, I can pinpoint maybe an emotionally triggering part of my day, or something that happened at work or in my personal life where there's an emotional element to it, where it's kind of like I'm burning out because I'm either not feeling it or I'm feeling it too much. So do you know what I mean? It's one end of the spectrum versus the other. Whereas this time, I'm not emotional about anything. I'm just, I'm burning out, and I can feel a real heaviness in me. And I don't know if I should be worried. Am I in autopilot mode? Because I know I'm heavy, that stuff's happening at work and otherwise, and I'm carrying it. But am I just not processing it? So I'm burning out, and when I stop, I'm going to crash. I'm not sure.
Well, there's a lot happening for you in the next month, right?
Yes.
And already there has been a lot happening leading up to this 1 month.
Yeah.
So, I can appreciate and understand the emotions and the burnout, right? But on top of that, again, we kind of touched on this outside of the podcast, but also the vicarious trauma, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I wonder how much of that, once you go off and process whatever you're feeling in this burnout that we're talking about, I wonder how much of that will you see as, hey, was this vicarious trauma?
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Maybe that's what it is. So funny. I'll give Sarah a little shout out here.
We love you, Sarah,
We were
by the way.
having
Come on. Risk your career.
um
No, don't do that.
it's worth it.
Only David does that.
And drags me into it too. But I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but she had spoken to me about feeling some vicarious trauma and that she was processing emotionally a response she was having to something that she'd been, told or heard from another person.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, had asked me, "Oh, Ash, how are you going?" And I had told her something that had happened in my day or in my week. And, very astutely and very aware, she was kind of going, how are you processing? Are you all right? What's sort of happening? And I think that's where burnout kicked in for me, because I was like,
right,
I'm actually fine. Like, I did not even feel that. Like, it was an emotionally heavy event that happened. I kicked straight into whether it's a level of maybe comfort and confidence in the job where I was like, I know what to do. Like, I know how to handle this.
Yep.
I'm not feeling overwhelmed by the unknown or where do I get some help. I just sort of took it in my stride.
Yep.
I handled it. For all intensive purposes, I think the outcome was fairly positive, but maybe because of all of that, I haven't quite taken on that there was still an emotion involved.
Yeah.
I had to carry that person's emotions for X amount of time to keep myself in check, to ground them, because they were quite elevated, to bring them back to a neutral point to get that positive outcome. I'm burning out because I don't know that I've processed that as readily as I had in the past.
Yeah, but also I think it sounds like you've also perhaps built a level of resilience as well to whatever it was that you experienced. Like, inevitably, I think in this role you get to a point where, rightly or wrongly, to your benefit or detriment, that you build up a level of resilience to stuff that may affect the general public more. And again, like I said, I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, because some people say, well, you stop feeling, David, at one point in time, I'm just like resilient, man. But yeah,
that's
like,
all it is.
Who knows, you get to a point where I think the small stuff you won't sweat anymore. And whether that's good or not, who knows? Because maybe you get to a point where you can't relate to people anymore. If you do let yourself become too immune to that stuff.
Well, yeah, but this is really a problem outside of this job as well. Maybe it's something I've always thought about in general, I guess, with a mental health background and heading into a mental health field, the idea that vicarious trauma and taking on other people's thoughts, really understanding their actions, their intentions, where were they coming from, to really make sense of their situation. What is that doing to us in the process? Are we then carrying too much?
Yeah. There's just so many ways to be, and humans are so diverse. I think people like us, we kind of absorb it a bit more, process it, think about it, reflect it more, and hopefully gain some greater sense of wisdom from it all. Right. But as I said, people are so eclectic, and you mentioned it before, they interpret that information differently. Right. So it can be a positive or a negative. Let's just hope that for us, we can empathize a bit more.
And don't get to a point where we stop empathizing because we're so used to hearing negative things that we stop being able to go, hey, that happened to you, or hey, that sucked, no matter how minor or seemingly minor in the scheme of what we think.
Yeah, that's really important, man, because I feel like everyone has their own unique individual story. And even though we've come across the same story a billion times, right? Homelessness, mental health, drug use, whatever it is, we've heard it so many times repetitiously, right? That we kind of lose sight of the fact that, hang on, that's still that person's individual story, right? Like, this is still real to them, regardless of, though we've heard it a million times, like, we can't discount and take away their trauma, their hurt, their pain, whatever it is?
Well, good news story. The
Please,
way
I think
that
we
that
need
can
one.
the way that but I think can be healthily maintained by us or taken on by us is I don't know about you, but a lot of family members or friends or people in my life who aren't in this sort of industry ask me a lot, how can you relate to these people, or what could you say to them, or what could you offer, or you know do you think it's insulting that you're trying to offer them some comfort? And I think if you can keep yourself aware that that's their individual story and really listen to those specifics, the nuances of what happened to them. I've definitely had experiences where with a different person, then I can hear something and I go, hey, did it feel like this, or was this sort of how it was? And I can reflect with them in a way that sounds as though I've carried that trauma without ever having lived it. And the response is, hey, yeah, no, you do get it, or you have listened to me, or
Yep.
that really made sense in a way that maybe I have no right to be able to understand you, but because I've carried a little bit of trauma from other people, or I've taken the time to process their thoughts, intentions, and everything beforehand, I can relate to others sometimes more successfully.
Do you feel that that has a more emotional toll on you as a person because you're that way inclined? Whereas, again, I said previously, some people are lazy, right? They don't.
Yeah.
They are more than happy to kind of treat everyone with the same brush, put everyone in the same
Yeah.
bucket, So
Yeah.
if this happened to you, then you're that way inclined. If you did this, then you're that type of person. But
Yeah.
whereas you, like you said, you kind of you know, try to understand it a bit more and you invest a bit more, I don't know, thought, emotion into it. Do you feel like
Yeah.
that? I mean, that's where the vicarious trauma comes in. That's vicarious emotional
Maybe.
baggage comes in.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm. I think I'm setting myself up here for you to have a field day with me, but
it worked.
I think I do. Then I know I keep coming back to that feeling of not having anywhere to redirect that energy.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to me a lot about like wasted emotional energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't often feel it for myself, where I think I'm wasting emotional energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that when I'm thinking about others, what were their intentions, what were their thoughts,
Right.
being able to understand them, then I feel like there's that wasted energy, because I'm like, well, what do I do with whether it's that visceral immediate reaction, or what do I do with the other parts of it that still happened even though I understand it? That energy then feels wasted and sometimes can be quite cloudy, whether it's in my head or just over my mood, or over my energy altogether.
Right.
That energy can sit for a little while.
So the initial reason why you do it is because you want to help them, right? The initial reason why
Yeah.
you invest in that emotion is because, well, I want to understand you. I want to understand your emotions, where you're coming from, your story, in order
Yeah.
to help you as much as I can to cater to your
Yeah.
individual needs as an individual that's been through that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, the initial purpose is there, and that's great. But it's
Mm-hmm.
then when you walk away or that person's gone and you see the next person, but that emotional energy is still lingering, and that's when it becomes like, well, it's wasted emotional energy at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Where do I put this?
Yes, exactly.
Because I've got the next thing to do.
And the next thing to do is often more baggage, right? More
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah. And another conversation that we've had offline is what are we expecting when we walk in? Like, you might think, oh yeah, I'm carrying this emotional energy, and then this is going to be an emotionally charged, next discussion. And then somehow it still escalates. You know what I mean? We walk in with these expectations of how things are going to go. And I don't think that we're bad judges of character. I think there's just so many variables that quite often we get that wrong. We think it's going to go some way, and then it just really takes a turn.
Yep.
Because you can't be looking at people's emotions and their reactions and what they're carrying as their own baggage and expect it to fit neatly in a box and do the same thing every time. It's
Yeah.
gonna change really, really quickly.
The great thing is I've been doing it long enough where I don't have any expectations anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I don't have a plan anymore
Yeah.
because, like you said, so many variables, so many things could have happened within the interval of an hour prior to you seeing them that no, it's like the best plan is to have no plan and just go in there,
Yeah.
and hopefully you just have the right mindset and can make the right judgments to help these people. You
Yeah.
have the right sentiment.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
You see, but this is the thing for me. I think the not even necessarily about the job or anything that I've said tonight is not so much just about the work. I think it's bled so far into my person
Mm,
that I take everything at that sort of level, the way I process just about all my interactions. I'm trying to give it that time and space to go, hey, maybe where are you coming from or what was happening here? And maybe that's also where my burnout is coming from, that I'm
mm,
just running so far on trying to put these pieces of the puzzle together,
yep.
and the other person may not be doing that. Like they may not even be trying to put any pieces together, and I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here trying to figure out the answer to a question nobody's asked yet.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Does that upset you, like in the context of a personal relationship, where you're trying to put the pieces all together, but the other person is just like interpreting it like completely different? Like I said previously, like
Yeah.
my wife, like I may
Mm-hmm.
do something that may really upset her, but like in my mind, I was just like, I've just interpreted that action like just way left field. Does it bother you
Yeah.
when you're processing so much?
The only time it does is when that person expects a level of forgiveness. Like I
Mm,
don't so much have a problem with processing where you're coming from, just because again, it's maybe a sense of owing myself that forgiveness of like, hey, it's something as simple as your energy is a bit off today and that's impacting on me. I need to forgive that that's happening. So to do that, I'm going to think, what's going on for you? How's your day going?
mm,
How's your week been? Let me put the pieces of your puzzle together so that I can reason with what's happening to me right now as much as it's happening to you. And if you're not on the same level of depth as me,
yeah.
yeah, I don't have a problem, because that's how
Okay.
I get through my day. I need to make my peace with it because I was there too.
Yeah. Well, that's good then.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
when you get upset and angry and bitter about the other person, I think that's when it's like, that's when it's just chaos.
yeah, yeah. That only pushes my buttons when that person sort of has an expectation for it. Then it's kind of like, hold on a second.
Mm,
Have you taken the time? I've given you the emotional energy to figure out what were you thinking, where are you coming from, what was going on for you,
mm,
and made peace with it. If you haven't done that same work,
mm.
please don't enter this conversation expecting that I'm gonna be okay with what just happened.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of those people around.
Yes, there are. Yes.
There's a lot of shallow thinkers. Um,
Yes.
yeah, that they don't, and that's a skill. Not a skill, but it's also really important. Just in general, in life, it's really important to be able to process your emotions, process your thoughts, and be a bit more self-reflective on
Mm.
your behavior and things that you say towards others as
Yeah.
well. So, um, yeah. You got anything else?
The only other thing that popped
Mm.
into my head, and I got distracted before.
Oh yeah, you were gonna say something. And then, yeah.
I know, and then we derailed.
So this is what happens.
This a job I applied for years ago. The old cliche of treat others how you want to be treated.
Mm.
We unpacked that for like 3 days of training, and I was like, okay, cool. I get it, empathy, everything makes sense. And then it was like the Friday of training, we come in, and they're like, everything we've just taught you is wrong. And I'm like, what?
Mm.
And they're like, it's not the right way to go through life treating others how you'd like to be treated.
Right.
You should treat others how they want to be treated. And I was like, whoa,
Mm.
let me process that. Where does the
Yeah.
responsibility lie? What
Mm.
do we owe to others? What do we owe to ourselves? Is it that as a society, if I start doing that, am I probably part of the 5%? So am I just going to be disappointed all the time?
Yeah.
Because other people aren't going to do the same. So then I'm thinking about you're not thinking about me. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. But
Is
so
the
hang on,
laziness
is
about
that the right quest?
reciprocity?
But is that the right answer though? Because they like, so you said after 3 days they were like, oh, everything we
Mm.
told you is wrong. This
Yeah.
is the actual answer. Is that the answer?
Yeah. Well, that's what they thought it was. And I remember sitting in that training and going, I'm no longer listening. Like I know I had a very immediate reaction. Like I disagree so strongly that I just don't care what you're saying. I don't agree. No, it's not right. If other people expect to be treated in a certain type of way, then I expect them to be able to communicate that. If I'm doing something and it's not working for you, or it's kind of like we do at work, you want them to be motivated for their own reasons, not for what I've assumed motivates you.
Yep.
I think you also have a responsibility to share that with me. If
Yes.
I've made an assumption it's wrong, I'm responsible for that, but you're just as responsible for not pointing that out to me, because I may not be doing it on purpose. So if you're not sharing it, how am I also supposed to pick up that part of the puzzle?
Yeah, exactly. That's the question that popped into my mind when you told that story. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know how they want to be treated?
Yeah.
You know, I can't go through life, you know, treating people how they want to be treated when I have no psychic powers.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can rely on is my own instincts on how I would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to think that well, it's better than just assuming. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, then you could pick that apart in so many different ways. Because then is it that we think that we're always right? That's how I want to be treated. So you must want to be treated that way because it's the correct way, or it's better than, another way.
Yes. And it just kind of reeks of some sense of entitlement when it's like, you know better. Like, I know what you need. I know what, I'm going to treat you this way because I think this is how you would like to be treated. Like, that privilege comes across.
And then again, that's something that can be abused, and comes down to different power dynamics in a relationship as well. That person then goes, oh, that's what you need, and they start treating you or trying to mold you in a certain type of way because they have a sense of, oh, I think I know you better than you do, and then that person loses their autonomy.
Yeah, and
doesn't matter.
It's so complicated. It's like, what if the person says, I want to be treated like this or like that, and you just can't live up to those expectations, or treat them the way that they feel like they're entitled to be treated. It's like, it's...
Well, the big example that always, I think, comes up in my head when I think about this is kind of like when someone would withhold something from you. That feeling we've all had at some point where a fact or situation is going to upset someone, and it's that awkward position of, do I tell them? Do I share this with them? Is it my responsibility? Am I the person who should be telling you, depending on your involvement? All of those questions that come up. I think these are the situations where then it is important to ask that person how they want to be treated instead of assuming how you want to be treated.
Yes. The age old, if your partner cheated on you, would you want to know?
Yes. Would you, David?
Yeah, sure. I would. Why not?
That is the least convincing response you've ever given me.
Really? I'm sure I've done much worse. I've you know what? I've never considered it. I've never considered that thought. That's how secure I am in my relationship. I never needed to think about that.
Okay, so all right, not even that deeply. All right, so just I guess generally, if somebody had information that knew was going to upset you, do you want to know it?
Well, see, like I said, it depends on the result, and depends on the outcome, and it depends on how severe that information changes my life.
Okay.
Surely. I mean, surely they're valid factors that you would need to consider.
Valid factors.
Right? If it's going to be a life or death situation, yeah, sure, I want to know. But if it's something that's for me pointless, then no, I don't care. I don't need to know. And my threshold of pointless is pretty large.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
it is.
it needs to be pretty significant for me to actually care.
Yeah.
Ashley's
Yes.
no, she knows the truth.
I've won.
She knows. I don't care that much. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's all I have. I really don't have any more, unless you have any more to discuss on this topic, which we kind of branched off and talked about other random things as we do, and that's fine. That's why I love, chatting to you, because we just go off tangents. It's what we do. But yeah, we've literally, this page has what? Oh my dear Lord, I'm scrolling
There's
through it now.
hundreds. You said 50. There's so many.
I know, there's 205 philosophical questions, and I'm sure we're going to go through each and every one.
Done. We've got it like a year of content.
I know, it's amazing. No, it's seriously like a lot of really interesting questions that you can get into the weeds about. But there you go, another hour. This is meant to be the fourth one, but like I said previously, because I was threatened with physical harm, we dodged the third one. But yeah, so I appreciate everyone listening. I hope you enjoy it. Shout out to all our fans out there, of which there's only 2.
20 at the minute.
Me being like watching 15 of them.
Still counts.
Still counts. All right, we'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.